Welcome again to the monthly guest speaker event. It's my turn to speak this month, so normally we get somebody from the community to come in and share their story. But today I thought I'd share my story, and it's quite a long one, so keep doing what you're doing, and we'll roll along. I think my life is a story, and I think we need to make it a bestseller. You really need to get the best out of your life that you can, and I actually started to write a book some time ago called 50 Hats, which talks about all the different hats that I've worn since I had my injury. So it's gone on the back burner a bit, so maybe this speaking today might just inspire me to go and write that story. Before my injury, I was a typical country kid. I loved the outdoors. I was a fisherman. That's me, the good-looking rooster with the beanie with all the fish. I played a lot of sport. I was in all the sporting teams. Back row, top left is me. If you're trying to find, don't let the hair fool you. That's the good-looking rooster there. So I played a lot of sport. I was very active before my injury. That changed one day when I decided that I was going to go out and have a swim. It was actually the day that I had my injury. It was my baby sister's 7th birthday, and I was actually supposed to be playing rugby league that day in a competition in Townsville, but I got on the booze the night before and I was pretty hungover, and I slept in and missed the bus. So I decided that being hungover, hanging around a kid's 7th birthday party probably wasn't going to be really good for me, so I decided to go out to the river for a swim. That's the spot that I had my injury. I dived into shallow water. It's a place that I'd been to literally hundreds of times before. I knew it intimately. I knew it was shallow. I knew that you don't dive into shallow water, but for some reason that day I did, and that changed my life and changed what I was going to do in the future. The good old bad old days, I went through the spinal unit. That was 1978. This was what it looked like in the spinal unit back then. I spent the first 11 weeks of my hospital life in what's called a rotor bed. That was a bed, and I don't know if you can see in the picture clearly, there was skull tongs attached into my skull with about a 15 kilo weight hanging off the end of it, and that bed actually rotated like a pig on a stick. So that was to prevent pressure injuries. So the first 11 weeks for me was just in that contraption until my fractures stabilised. So these days, a lot of you guys that have had fractures, you may have had a surgery done already, and then the next week you're up in the wheelchair. For me, having that time in bed, when I eventually got in a wheelchair, I thought it was the best thing ever to actually be in a wheelchair, because it meant I wasn't in that fucking bed. So I guess I can't relate how you guys must feel having an injury and having a surgery and then getting thrown straight in a wheelchair straight up. I think that that must be a bit of a struggle. So the first year for me was a real steep learning curve. I went through lots of rehabilitation centres. I spent about 11 months altogether in the spinal unit, doing my physiotherapy, doing my occupational therapy, learning some of the skills that I would need in my life at home. I'd already left home, so my options back when I was in the spinal unit were I would either go into an old age home, go into a nursing home, or I'd have to move back with my parents. So I made it my mission through my rehabilitation to become as independent as I possibly could, with the goal that I wasn't going to do either of those options. I was going to move out on my own and live independently. It took a long time. I learnt very basic skills when I was in the spinal unit. When I left the spinal unit, I couldn't transfer properly. I couldn't cook my own meals. I couldn't push my chair across the road on my own. I certainly couldn't transfer in and out of a car. And I think that was my mission when the first day home from hospital, I got my mum to park her old EH Holden down the back under the mango tree, and it took me 3 days to figure out how I was going to get myself in the car, get a wheelchair in, and then drive the car. So it's a long process. I know you being here, going through your rehabilitation now, this is part of it. This is where you're going to learn the theory of what you need to learn, and when you go home, that's when you're going to put it into practice. So, you know, I encourage you to get as much as you can while you're here. I love cars. I love being able to drive. I remember when I was first in hospital, when I was still in head traction, and the doctors came around in their ward round one day, and I desperately wanted to know if I could still drive a car. And I asked them that question when they did the ward rounds, and go, can I still drive a car? And the answer was, yeah, probably you'll still be able to drive a car. All the other young blokes in the spinal unit want to know if they can still get an erection or not. And I said, oh yeah, and that. But then I figured if I had a flash car, well, you know, maybe I'd get by. That's my very first car, my very first wheelchair. And first wife as well, but we won't go there just yet. There were very few options when it came to wheelchairs. There was no trialling this wheelchair and that wheelchair. They were very much like the old wheelchairs you see in the chemist these days, and there were two wheelchair companies, so you didn't have much choice. It was the same with cars. There wasn't a lot of choice with cars, but over the years I've had probably, I don't know, I can't remember how many cars I've had, how many cars I've driven. I like the Utes. That's me in one of my skinnier times. That was probably about 10 years ago, while I was still managing to transfer into the car and break my wheelchair down. Did anyone watch Katie's transfer demonstration yesterday? I did the same thing, but the longer version. Took a little bit longer time. Took some working out, but I eventually got the idea. As I've got older, I've found it more and more difficult to get in and out of the car. I've done some damage to my shoulders, but I found a way that I could still drive, and that is the same car that's outside just before I did the paint job, before I did the Dodgy Brothers paint job on it. So that was one thing that was really important to me. I really hold on to that with everything that I've got. I really strongly want to be able to drive my car as long as I can. It gives me the independence. It gives me the independence to go places on my own, and yeah, something that I've held on to all these years. I went back to work after I got through rehabilitation. I went back to work. I've never been on the disability pension in all the years since I had my injury. I've always wanted to work and earn my own way. Now that I'm onto the NDIS, I think it's just payback that I'm starting to get back some of the money that I paid out in tax for the last 40 odd years. So work was a big one for me, and I've done so many different jobs. I used to tutor maths as a young man. My second wife was a teacher, a high school teacher, and she got me a job at the school tutoring mathematics to the young girls. I had another job with the same school running outdoor education camp, and that was where I would take year 9 girls from the college and take them out bush for 5 days and 5 nights, and we'd camp and we'd build our own things. I think they're building a table or something there out of sticks and bits of string and stuff. So I really like the outdoors. That's probably another different model chair. Notice my footwear. Notice my protective footwear there. When I first got out of hospital, I had that much neuropathic pain that I couldn't stand anything on my feet. I couldn't stand the sensation of having shoes on, and now I can't stand not having shoes on. So be prepared for those things to change. Be prepared for your spasm to change, your sensation. So that was one of my jobs. I've run workshops. I ran some like self-help workshops for people after the 2011 floods. I did some workshops. I've managed an employment agency. I've been a bookkeeper for a while. I worked in a hardware store making pine ladders. You know that pine ladder stuff that you get and people have on? Yeah, I made that for about a week. It's like, oh no, not my job. I've recently started to do some public speaking. I go out and I speak to people, mainly businesses, like I speak to legal firms and those sort of companies around the place, around creating change in their culture of their work or themselves. So that's something that I've just recently started doing. I had the support of my family, and that was very important when I was in the spinal unit. Knowing that I had somewhere to go when I discharged from the hospital was very important. But I always wanted to have kids of my own. It was one of my dreams when I was a young man that I would start a family and have children. I never asked the question when I was in the spinal unit. I never actually asked the question, will I still be able to have children? Or will I still be able to be a dad? And I left hospital believing that I wouldn't be able to do that. I left hospital believing that, I would no longer be fertile and I wouldn't have the opportunity to become a father. I believed that for probably 6 or 7 years after I left hospital, and I mentioned my first wife. That was probably a big contributing factor in the reason why we broke up, is because I wasn't able to have, or thought I wasn't able to have children. It wasn't until I met my second wife that I actually went and found out and got the information that I needed to find out that yes, I could still have children. And on the 3rd of March 1995, those 2 little gentlemen were born, and have caused me lots of grief ever since. But it's interesting how your belief can affect your decisions, and that, and the importance of asking the question and ask. Our motto is, with the peer support team, is if you're going to ask, we're going to answer. So, if you have a question about anything, ask us. I've now got grandkids. I've got two beautiful little grandkids, so that's one of those little boys, all grown up. I think it's really important to look at your relationships and how your relationships will possibly be different after you have a spinal cord injury. I was lucky enough to find that special person, although it was late in life. I got married in 2015 to my childhood girlfriend from grade 7 at primary school. We reconnected after 30-something years. She actually she Googled my name and sent an email to my old work address, and I replied back to the email, and we got together and have been together ever since. So I think the power of unconditional love, and I put that in there because it's not just important in a relationship. It's important in yourself to have unconditional love for yourself. When you have an injury like this, it's very easy to think less of yourself and to think that you may be not worthy of what you were worthy of prior to your injury. I know I certainly did. I felt that I wasn't a worthwhile person and didn't have anything to contribute to society early on when I first had my injury. So I think it's important to give yourself a break, give yourself a bit of slack. I mean, my injury diving into a creek that I knew intimately, and I knew you don't dive there. I knew that, and it was a stupid thing to do, and there's no sugarcoating that, but I did it. And I beat myself up for a fair while about how stupid I was to do something like that and end up with a spinal cord injury. But after a while, I found a way to forgive myself for that mistake. And yeah, while it was a biggie, I needed to take ownership of that and just give myself that unconditional love. So I married my childhood sweetheart just recently, I said. So now I have 7 grandkids because my wife's also had a couple of marriages and lots of kids. So I've got lots of hobbies. I think we talked a little bit about that in patient ed session on Tuesday, about the importance of having something to do once you get out of here and getting back to your life. I fish. I like to fish. I tell people I like catching fish. I don't really like fishing, and there's a difference. I get cranky if I go fishing. I don't actually catch fish. So that's one of my things. And I think with anything that you feel like getting back into, there is a way that you can do that. And getting back fishing was one of them. Prior to my injury, I used to fish every weekend. Sometimes my dad and I would go fishing in the morning before work and before school. We'd go for a couple of hours when the conditions were right and the fish were on. We'd go for a couple of hours, and my friends at school would tell me to get away from them because I stink. I'd go to school smelling like fish, and we'd go home at lunchtime, we'd clean the fish, and then we'd go back afterwards. So yeah, fishing was a bit of an obsession. My dad's 83 this year and still fishes 7 days a week. So I breed and show poultry. That's one of my new things. I've been doing that for about 8 years now, and I breed the fowls. I take them to the shows. I go to the different agricultural shows. I recently went to Glen Innes to show my fowls and won my very first champion bird of show at Glen Innes show. So that was a big achievement for me. I was pretty chuffed with myself about that. I've recently taken up breeding and showing finches as well. So just as trying to find something that is really doable and that I can take a bigger role in. I can feed my chooks, I can feed my finches, I can do most of the care that's needed with them on my own. So that was quite important. Like Robert, I like to have a beer at the pub occasionally and a bit of pub grub. Is that for me, dear?
Yeah.
Thank you. Occasionally we'll go and treat ourselves to a feed at the local pub. Where I live, we've got a pub about 3 k's down the road, so I can take myself there in the power chair and not have to worry about drink driving on the way home, which is pretty good. I've done a lot of travelling, something that I didn't think in the early days would be something that I would be able to do successfully. But I have done a lot of travelling since then, mostly road trips. Again, my love of driving, I do lots of road trips. I used to do a lot of driving when I was younger and my eyesight was better. I'd get in my car after work on a Friday afternoon here in Brisbane and drive to Townsville non-stop, like, through the night and get there, and then spend 2 days recovering from it. My wife and I decided that it would be a really good idea to go grey nomading, so we set up a caravan and decided that we would go off and do the grey nomad thing and just have a carefree lifestyle. How do I describe it without saying it was shit? It was shit. It really was not for us. There was so many things went wrong. And I'll give you a little example. We hooked up the trailer and left my home to drive out through Toowoomba, and the plan was to get out to about Roma that first day. We got to the top of the range at Toowoomba and the car broke down on the side of the road just into Toowoomba. While I was on the side of the road waiting for the RACQ to come along, I had a bowel accident. So yeah, it wasn't a really good start. We spent an unscheduled week in Toowoomba and things got shitter from then on. We hemorrhaged money for a long time. Lots of things went wrong with the car. I think we went through 4 different mattresses in the caravan before we got one that worked. And it was a lot of work. Certainly not how I pictured it. But now my wife and I joke about it. I was might get the caravan back and go for a weekend or somewhere. She just looks at me and it's like, that's not happening. But it's something we did. I think it's really important to get an idea and think about what you want to do and give it a crack. We gave it a crack and it split right open. So not something, but I know now. I know now that that's not our life. Being really sports orientated when I was younger, I got back into sporting activities after I got out of hospital and went back and did my rehabilitation. After I sort of went through that rehabilitation, I went back to work. I was back at work, working full time. I was training with sporting wheelies. I think 3 days a week training. All my mates were going pubbing and clubbing 3 or 4 nights a week. I was doing that too. I was looking after my own flat. I was doing my own housework. I was buying my own groceries. I was cooking my own meals. I was doing everything, and it was a real. I was driven by that desire to be independent and to prove that while I have a significant disability, I was going to still prove to everybody that I could still do all that stuff. I've since learnt that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, but it was good to go through. So I did wheelchair sports. You probably picked now the good-looking rooster in the middle is me, and that was the training track out at QE2. We used to do our training out at the QE2 stadium. That was brand new back then. I think we trained there when the 1982 Commonwealth Games were on. So I was lucky enough to get chosen to represent my country in wheelchair athletics, and got a trip away, went away to Hong Kong with the Australian team. That was a really big moment. I'd never been out of the country before. I'd done a little bit of travelling around, but yeah, going overseas, when I say on my own with a team, but we were all responsible for our own care and looking after ourselves. So that was really, really exciting. And I had success. I won 4 gold medals in the international competition. I know if you look at me now, I don't look like an athlete with this build, but go on. Back in the day, it was something. One of my jobs, I was a goat farmer for a long time, and I make the joke. We play this game when I do induction with our carers at work. We play the game of how many kids do you think Cole's got, and everyone throws out a number. It's like, 2 kids, higher. 3 kids, higher. 10 kids, higher. It's like somewhere between 250 and 300 kids. And then I tell them it's because I was a goat farmer. Oh, dad joke. But again, another ute, that's one of our, that's out on the farm. As every farmer knows, you need a good dog. That was my best friend for many years, and she learnt how to do the work that I needed to do. If I needed to get the goats in, I would just send the dog. I didn't actually go down the paddock to get the goats in. I'd send the dog down. But Dad couldn't understand how I could teach the dog to do these things without actually going and making it do it. And Border Collies are very smart dogs, and all I did was she'd start chasing the goats. I'd say, go chase the goats, chase the goats. And the goats aren't silly, they'd come and hide in the yard when the dog started chasing them. So my dad would come out and say, do you want me to go and bring the goats in for you? I'd say, no, I'll just send the dog. He said, how did you do that? I just let her do something she liked and then put a command to it. So, I used to breed and exhibit goats. I had quite a bit of success with the goats as well. Living in Charters Towers, I used to take my goats to the Sydney Royal every year. And again, that love of driving, we pack the goats up in a trailer, drive from Charters Towers to Sydney. It's about 2,400 kilometres. Usually go with a mate and we just swap drivers every couple of hours and drive right through. I think they could see the gum leaves on it, because I remember one trip we went to Sydney, and after a couple of days at the showgrounds, these other people that were exhibiting there, they said, oh, did you boys come down from up north? We said, yeah, we've driven down. They said, you came down whichever road it was, I forget the road. You came down that road to come into Sydney. We said, yeah, that's how we came. He said, you know when you turn right, you put your left blinker on, and when you turn left, you put your right blinker on? Somehow the wires on the trailer had got mixed up, and we'd driven through the Sydney traffic indicating the wrong way all the way through. It's like, okay. I never won a ribbon at Sydney Royal with my goats, but I went for like 6 years in a row just to take them there and put them beside the best in the country and see where I stood in relation to them. I did get in the final lineup once. I think I got like 6th or 7th place. I was drunk for lunchtime that day. It was a big celebration. I missed the goaties. I don't have them in the backyard at home, although when I did move to Townsville, it had a little like 1.5 acre block in town. I still had the goats in town, so it's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy that breeding, and I enjoy playing around with genetics. And so the future. Life's about what you're going to do, not what you have done. And while I've got a pretty colourful past and I've done lots of things in the past, they really aren't the important part about my life. The important part about my life is what I'm doing right now, but what I'm going to do in the future. And I think, for someone that's really injured and in a spinal unit, you can think about what you used to do and how you used to do it. But the important thing now is thinking about what you're going to do in the future and how you're going to do it differently to the way you used to do things. I mean, I've done things since my injury that I wouldn't have even dreamed of prior to my injury. But with this comes a lot of doors closed, but a lot of doors open as well. So I think this man is a man called Lou Tice. I did a workshop that Lou ran. I never actually got to meet the man himself, but Lou is like a motivational coach, and he coaches world leaders, and he created this workshop that I attended, and it changed my life more so than people say to me, oh, having a spinal injury must have been the most profound thing that ever happened to you, that was life-changing. I say, yeah, it's top 5. The day I did that workshop of Lou's, was the day that my life changed forever. I learned how to think effectively. I learned how to think in a way that will create my own future. And I think if I share one thing with you guys today, it's that you can all remember what happened in the past, and you can all remember what you used to do, and that's great. Have those fond memories of what you used to do, but focus on the future and focus on what am I going to do now. My goal was to become a draftsman and do a uni course and become a school teacher. I couldn't think of anything worse now to be a school teacher in that environment. So yeah, it's all about the future, and give yourself a challenge. Challenge yourself with a goal. And something that Lou taught me was you don't have to know how you're going to achieve it. Just give yourself the goal and you figure out how. Figure it out. A lot of people won't set themselves a goal that they don't think they can achieve because they can't see the steps to getting there. Like my goal is to have a farm again with a big wheelchair accessible house and 20 acres again. And I used to think, well, that can't be a goal unless I know how I'm going to earn enough money to buy that farm. I'll never get the farm if I'm focused on how am I going to get the money to get it. I can get the farm another way. You just have to give yourself the goal and let yourself work it out. Questions? Nothing.
How did you handle the real bad days?
How did I get through real bad days?
Yes.
Lots of different ways. When I was first in the spinal unit, there was a man in the bed in my room called Bill Garston. Bill's injury was very high on his neck. I think it was, he had no function at all below, like you could just feel the top of his shoulders. And at that time, whenever I used to feel sorry for myself and what my situation was, I used to think, well, I'm not Bill. Look what he's got to go through.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're down, nowadays I think about other times in my life when I was really low, and there's been a lot of them. When my boys were born, we had lots of failed attempts at fertility programs when we were trying to have kids. We had twin girls born early, and they lived. Veronica lived for 3 days. Kate lived for almost 3 weeks before they passed away. That was a really dark time for me, and one that I couldn't see any purpose. Someone says, oh, you can see the good in any situation. I struggled a lot to find the good in that. I can see it now. When I even said to my wife one day, I said, how could those kids have learnt a life lesson in that short time? And she said to me, maybe the lesson was for someone else and not for them. And I thought, wow. So I get it now. Our family was all over the shop. People not talking to each other. Those girls were born and died. The family closed back in and became supportive of each other. So I think when you think about those really bad times and you can't see a way out, I like to think about times when I've been really down and how I got back out of it. A lot of people struggle with when they say, oh, you're such an inspiration. People say to me, oh, you're such an inspiration. And I used to go, oh, I'm just doing what anyone else does. And I got to a point where I thought, you know what? I am an inspiration because I've had this spinal injury and I've come out the other end. And that's exactly the same for you guys. You are an inspiration to so many other people. The fact that you're here and you're doing it and so, yep, I've been smacked over the head by something that you wouldn't wish on anyone, but you're getting through it. and you will get through it. So, you know, feel good about yourself, about the fact that while right now you might be struggling you'll get through it. You've got through everything else that life's thrown at you. How's this going to be different? It's not. I can tell you now, and you may be going, oh yeah, it's all right for you to say you're 40 years down the track. When I was where you are, I couldn't see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't see anything positive. It was like, you know, people would say, oh, you know, you'll do this and you'll do that. What do you know about it? What do you know about me? I don't know anything about you, but I know about me. I know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, it helps.
I hope so. Because it is. No one chooses to be here.
No, yeah.
No one chooses this.
I said to my man, and I said, I'm glad it happened to me, not to a little kid or an older person, because no one has been able to handle it. So, yeah.
I think everyone deals in their own way. Everybody has stuff. People say to me, "Oh, you've got quadriplegia." What about the people in the spinal unit that have paraplegia, that have all that function? You know, how easy is it for them? I said, no, it's just as hard for them. That, you know, their injury has just as much impact on them as mine has on me. Yeah.
How much is goats? How much do you sell a goat for?
How much do I sell a goat for?
Yeah.
For the plate or for stud?
Just like a truck full. How much would you sell?
A truck full. Do you know that the goat market is really big at the moment? And I'll tell you some little facts. Goat meat is the most eaten red meat in the world. Australia is the biggest exporter of goat meat in the world. No one hears about it on the news, but yeah, it's really taken off. Really taken off. I sometimes go, you can actually buy goat meat across the road at the Halal Butcher. I've actually bought some there. I wanted to be a Brahma cattle farmer. I wanted to have a Brahma cattle stud, but I had 20 acres in Charters Towers. You know how many stud cattle you can run on 20 acres in Charters Towers? One. Pretty hard to have a breeding program with one. So someone said to me, why don't you get goats? I started with Angora goats. Oh my God. I lost so much money in goat ventures. Even the bull goats that I bred, I paid thousands of dollars for goats, and then the ass fell out of the market. I'm okay to say it now. I was embarrassed to say I paid $6,500 for 2 little 6-week-old goats. And my dad just said, what? Thought they were worth it at the time.
You still grow?
No, when I left up there, I gave them to my mate. I gave them all to him and said, I'm done with the goat business. Yeah, you can have it. He's still got some there. I'll talk to him a bit. But yeah, great hobby to get into.
How did your family handle it when you had the accident?
Do you know, my mum loved me unconditionally. She just said, no. That's a really good question. I'm so glad you asked that because...
Well, I'm just only like 5 months into after my accident, so I'm sort of getting to terms with it and everything at the moment, so I wanted to ask questions. So.
My mum thought her little baby was back and that she had the baby back to look after and cut his dinner up for him and bring him a drink of water and, you know, can I fluff your pillow up for you? Sorry, Mum, but I'm a grown adult. I'm not. And we had a struggle. We had a struggle with me fighting for my independence and Mum wanted to do everything for me. That was a big one. That was a big struggle. It was like, Mum, leave me alone. Go away and let me do it.
It's like that at the moment. I couldn't call home the other morning. I call home every morning. I didn't call home, and she panicked straight away. So bad thoughts, something had gone wrong. And
It's a mum thing. I don't have an answer for you. I don't, like,
so it's just
I made my mum cry all the time because I wanted my independence and she wanted her baby back.
So it's just a mum thing.
It's a mum thing. It's a mum thing. It's like, you know. And now I think about it from mum's side, it's like, oh, I was such an asshole to her back then. But she just wanted to love me. She just wanted to look after me.
Yeah.
It's like, my dad, on the other hand, my dad still has not come to terms with my injury. He still looks at me and sees what could have been.
Yeah.
That the kid that had all that potential back then, he doesn't see the potential that I see in myself now. And the moment that my life changed was the moment that I stopped trying to do things to make my dad proud, because I spent a long time trying to get his approval and trying to make something of my life that would make my dad feel that pride.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing that. And I just did things for me. And there were things that happened that he would feel proud about my achievement. And someone said to me once, don't you feel good now that your dad is proud of what you do? I said, I don't feel any different to when he was disappointed, because it's not about his feelings, it's about mine. I feel good about it, and that's all that matters.
Was it hard for your family though to come to terms with everything and how things in your life had changed?
Yeah. The relationships in the family change as well, like my relationship with my little sister, and the fact that I had my injury on her 7th birthday. So now, you know, when I ring her up for a birthday, she says, I still remember that day. And I said, I remember it too.
It's just that's what I'm worried about, how my family are handling it and operate at the moment.
Do you know what? You can only worry about how you feel about it.
Yeah.
If you start worrying about how someone else is feeling, that's their job. That's their job. You can only worry about you. And you'd be worried sick all the time if you're constantly thinking about, oh, I wonder how they feel about this, I wonder how...
Yeah.
Just how you feel. You just feel good. And like if someone else is upset or if they're cranky or whatever, my wife says get over it. She tells me get over it all the time, like and not because she doesn't like me, because she loves me. She said, you know what, you need to sort that out, because
Yeah, it's just sometimes it's so hard to get over it, like, straight away.
it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. I've been doing it 40 years and I'm still practicing. So, yeah. It sounds a bit selfish. It sounds selfish.
That's what I've been feeling though, because I don't think I have the right to concentrate on me. I've got to help and worry about the family too.
Have you flown much in a plane?
No, I don't like flights.
Never? Never been in a plane?
No.
When you get on a plane, what happens is, once you're in your seat, the flight attendant will come and give you the safety presentation, and they'll tell you where the life jackets are and where the safety exit is, blah, blah. They'll also tell you about the oxygen mask, and they say if there's an accident, an oxygen mask will fall from the ceiling.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
Put your own oxygen mask on first before you try and help others.
Yeah.
That's all you have to think about. When you're thinking about helping someone else, make sure your own oxygen mask is on first. Because if you're not okay in you can't help someone else.
Yeah, I just...
You can't try and make them feel better.
Bad though when because I'm concentrating on myself all this time and not being able to help them as well as my problem.
Who's the most worthy person in the world?
Suppose yourself.
Who is most worthy of your support and your help?
Myself and even all my family, I suppose.
Yourself first. You can't help someone else if you're not right yourself. And I'm talking about in here,
Yeah.
you know, and you can still help people physically with a spinal injury, but you've got to be okay in here.
Yeah, I think
And you know the other key, tell them how you're feeling. I see people coming here and their families, they say, oh, I can't let myself, I can't show my partner that I'm upset, and they walk outside and they get out to their car and they're bawling their eyes out. And I've seen people in the car and I said, what's up? Oh, I'm just having a moment. I'm just really upset, but I couldn't do it inside because I didn't want my husband. Bullshit.
that's me, I can't.
Your husband thinks you're coping. Your husband's sitting in his bed inside going, my wife doesn't seem to be upset by this. Oh, you know, she can't love me as much as she says she does because she hasn't even cried. Well, show each other your emotions. You have to do it.
Yeah, I've got to do that, but it's just, I'm at the point where I don't like to put all my troubles on. So,
Tell them that. Tell them that. Next time they come and say, you know what, I'm suppressing this stuff because I don't want to put my stuff onto you. You know what they'll probably say to you? Don't be so silly.
yeah.
That's what we're here for. We're here to support you.
Yeah, but that's trying to get it in here, that's the hard part of the
Say it to them. Tell them that you're having a struggle, and you don't want to pull you down. You don't want to pull them down with you.
Yeah.
Tell them that, and I guarantee you what they'll say.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, "I feel bad that you felt like that."
Yeah. And don't
They'll say,
worry about me and
"Yep, yep."
that's what
That's why your family. That's why your supporters come here. It's not to stare and look at what's going on. It's to give you support. Let them do it. People that have always been givers, that have always been helpers, find it really hard to let other people help them because I'm usually the one that helps them. Think about it from their perspective. Think about it, if it was your daughter or your mum that's in here, what you would want to be doing. That's what you have to do. You know what?
Get over myself and
Let them give you the art of receiving is just as important as the art of giving. Allowing someone else to give you something is actually giving to them. It's giving them the opportunity to do what they want to do. They want to come in, they want to help you. So I'm going to allow you to do that because that's what I want to do for you.
I'm good at just listening up here. Once it's in
We don't tell each other enough. We don't tell each other enough about how we're feeling or thinking or why we do things, and then we go away and we think, oh, they're doing that because this. And it's probably not why. We make it up. My wife doesn't love me anymore because she hasn't been upset, or it's like, I haven't seen her upset. She hasn't told me she's upset. My wife now taught me how to cry, and it's the best thing ever. I bawl all the time now. I'm like a regular crybaby.
I'm like
But
that. I'm like that.
Sometimes you need to. Sometimes you need to have a cry, and don't worry that someone else is watching. If you get sad and want to cry, you just have a cry.
I say to the nurses all the time, I say, if I don't laugh, I'll just bawl and I can stop crying. So I just start laughing.
Do you know what? If sadness and those other emotions weren't meant to be experienced, they wouldn't have been invented. So why does everyone say, oh, I've got to be happy? You've got to be sad too. Let yourself be sad. It's a shit thing. It's like, I was sad for ages. I get angry sometimes. I got angry the other day with the boss over our budget at work. And they said, oh, you need to just get over it and be happy about it. I said, no, I don't like it and I'm angry and I'm going to stay goddamn angry. Oh, but the budget's not going to change. I said, yeah, but I can still be angry about it. I don't have to like it now just because you said that's it. I'll get over it. After I'll go, okay. That's the budget. Stop being angry now. Let's do what we need to do.
Yeah.
But I say engage in all those emotions. You know, squeeze them. Squeeze every last tear out of them, and then you feel so much better after a big cry.
Yeah.
I know I do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there's plenty of bad days and things start going well, I suppose.
yeah. And when you have those bad days, when you feel better again, think about how you got through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't think about how sad you were. Think about how strong you are because you were sad, and now you're happy. We've all got the strength. We've all got it in us. Some of us just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and whereabouts it is or...
Yep. Yeah, remember that oxygen mask. Oxygen mask technique. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers.